Hello, guys, and welcome to another Spodcast. I am not CJ, I am a CJ, a variant of the original CJ. Yeah, that joke was funny on my head. But yeah, it's a Loki special today, and we have numerous people who are willing to come talk about Loki. So let's just get straight into it and introduce them. As always, I have John, we have Bethany returning, and we have a SpoilerTV staffer, someone who I used to do podcasts with for about 7-8 years. He has returned once again. We have Bradley. Hey guys, how's everyone doing?
Doing very well.
Yeah,
Good, CJ, thank you.
Yeah, everyone sounds so enthused and excited about this. It's great, yeah. But no, Loki, the finale was today. I only watched it about an hour ago. I don't know about you guys. When did you manage to catch it?
It's been about an hour ago for me as well.
Yeah,
so it's
same
still
here.
fresh.
I watched it at lunchtime, British time, so about 12 o'clock.
That's not too bad going. Now, Bradley, you just kind of binge watched everything. Was it yesterday?
I'd watched one episode at about 6 p.m. yesterday when you suggested a podcast, and I thought, well, yeah, you know what, I'm up for that. So I got through the next 4 last night, and yeah, the finale today. It was a good ride.
Yeah, nothing like last minute just to prep for the podcast. But no,
Well,
appreciate
exactly.
Yeah, but appreciate
Exactly.
you binging
Why do you
and
need to do
coming
things
back.
You don't need to do things in advance. You can do things with 5 minutes to spare, and you're fine.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much how we've done podcasts over the years on Spoiler TV. It's just, should we watch something? I will wing it. It's fine. Let's pretend we've seen it. You can pretty much work out the plot of most TV shows. But this one, I don't think anyone predicted what was happening with Loki. I want to say 6 episodes. It was a 6-episode season, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it
I
was.
feel like it needed more. I think they could have went further, but it's that whole quality over quantity sort of argument. But well, first of all, before we talk about the finale, what were your kind of quick thoughts on season 1? Because it's been confirmed for season 2, but quick thoughts on season 1 without spoilers. Wow.
Yeah,
I
mine
was just
we're
waiting
all
on somebody to go there.
just mind blown. Yeah. For me, I think it had the strongest finale out of all the 3 shows we've seen so far. Definitely.
I think as a whole, the series has been, I think it's been done very, very well, especially with the 10 years of knowledge that we have of Loki. It's blown it out of the water.
I don't think, actually, if you kind of tried to describe a Loki series or what a Loki series might be, you'd want it to be something that is kind of is Loki, which is that it's mischievous at times and it's heartfelt at times sometimes, and it's got all those kind of layers that we've seen in the Avengers and Thor from Loki. And actually they've really expanded that, and I think they have delivered quite well.
And since we're talking about shows that delivered quite well, we won't mention Falcon Winter Soldier too much because, well, actually, I don't think I've spoke to Bethany or Bradley about this. John and me are very similar in thoughts and opinions. Bradley's already shaking his head. So, Bradley, what did you think of Falcon Winter Soldier first of all?
Look, my shaking of my head probably feels a little bit harsh because I liked a lot of it, and then there were obviously things that I didn't like in it, but the finale particularly, it was one of those almost Game of Thrones, but without like the season being terrible. It was one of those situations that it felt like it was building something really nice, and Loki kind of shows where the Falcon and Winter Soldier went wrong, because it felt like it was building to this really interesting crescendo that might do something different, as Loki does here, and then it just kind of fell flat on its face. And I was really disappointed by where the Falcon and Winter Soldier ended up, because that was so much fun as well.
I made the joke to CJ last night, didn't we? We kind of joked and said that, like, Don Cheadle won an Emmy Award, and that pretty much just sums up the performance and the story of the whole of Winter
That's what I was
Soldier.
leading to. God, spoilers. But yeah, we're leading to that. But Bethany, were you similar in thoughts on Falcon and Winter Soldier?
I think I was. I mean, I enjoyed the first few episodes, but for me, Falcon and the Winter Soldier felt like it could have been more of a movie. It had that type of premise, but like everybody's gone and said, the ending kind of let it fell flat in a way, and it was just like Oh, so that's just it then.
There was the great penultimate, like really, really good character building in that penultimate episode that I loved. And then it just became like half an hour of people hitting each other.
It
and
just ended up being dropped. Like, it felt as though the writers just went, yeah, we'll just leave it here. And I was just like, no, you can't leave it there. And I mean, obviously the end credit scene as well. I mean, that payoff didn't pay off very well, in my opinion.
See, my argument is it was 2 seasons in 1 season. You had the Winter Soldier storyline, you had the Falcon storyline, and they tried to combine the two when really they should have split them apart. But yeah, the reason why I'm bringing up Winter Soldier and WandaVision is because the Emmy nominations came out, and as John stated, Don Cheadle has got a nomination for his 2 minutes on screen for Best Guest
I think it was
Actor.
less than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, was it 45 seconds maybe? I don't know. But yeah, it was a weird one. I don't know if that's just down to COVID, not being very many shows, or literally Disney have just went, please just give us a nomination so we've got something to brag about. But more importantly, WandaVision was at 23 nominations in total, especially for Olsen, Catherine Hahn, and Bettany all getting Best Actors and Supporting Actor nods, which I think is... The Bettany one has a bit... I don't know how much she actually did, but Catherine Hahn and Olsen definitely deserve. What are your thoughts on the nominations for them 3?
With your argument with COVID, WandaVision was also filmed during COVID, so at the end of the day, both of them had exactly the same premise, but I think overall, WandaVision, out of all of these 3, has definitely been a winner for me, especially with the themes that have occurred through it. And I definitely totally agree that the 2 female leads have been awarded these awards, and I honestly do hope that they come out with at least a couple of those Emmys at the end.
Anyone else?
I'm all for...
Oh, go on, John.
I'm all for the Emmys for WandaVision. I don't feel like there is so much good content out there. I don't think Winter Soldier and Falcon provided that to deserve an Emmy, to be honest with you. But you know, it's nominations, of course, so it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to necessarily win. But yeah, I think the one thing that sort of hinged on the rumor was that the original script for Winter Soldier and the Falcon was to do an infection basis. So because of that, they changed it over for the whole of COVID. So we don't know what the end product would have been of the previous script potentially. But yeah, WandaVision definitely deserved what it got.
And as we've had numerous conversations over the years, CJ, the Emmys can be very unreliable for what's actually good on television. Like Don Cheadle is great, but they're nominating a name, aren't they? They're not nominating a performance. Whereas with the 3 WandaVision people, and I do think Paul Bettany had a supporting role, obviously, compared to Elizabeth Olsen, but I still think fairly substantial and deserving of it. Those 3 very much, that's nominated on performance.
See, we've had this huge argument on previous podcasts, the original SpoilerTV podcast, where these types of shows 7-8 years ago wouldn't have even been mentioned and even thought about. And Bradley knows exactly which show I'm going to go on about in a second and which actor I'm going to go on about. Would you like to take a guess who I'm going to go with, Bradley?
Am I going to guess John Noble?
It is John Noble, who played Walter Bishop on Fringe. Every year he was shunned, and it's still one of my favourite performances years on. If Fringe had came out now, he would have been nominated easily. But it's good to see that now these shows are getting the recognition that they need. And it's just unfortunate that Loki is just fell outside of this window. And I think by the time the next lot of Emmys come out, I think Loki may be forgot about and may not get as much recognition as what Loki, I think, deserves. Because I'm personally a fan of Loki over WandaVision. I'm assuming Bethany is WandaVision over Loki.
I'm on the cusp. On the cusp.
What about you, lads? Where are you kind of going in order of Marvel TV shows right now? We know Winter Soldier's at 5th place out of the 3. And where would you kind of put the order?
WandaVision at the top. It's close. I think it's close, but I do think that was probably just a bit more well-rounded.
I think I liked Loki better because it wasn't the thing that killed WandaVision for me was the theories ended the series better than the actual series finale. I think for me personally, that Loki had a stronger continuation of storyline, and it also had this new character and this actress that had to develop in that role while the series went on. So I think for me personally, the strength of Loki sat at the top because of those dynamics there, and the finale. That was the finale finished it sweetly.
I'm leaning towards Loki personally. I've enjoyed that, and I think again everyone had this high expectations of Wanda. And then that's what got everyone excited, and it didn't meet those expectations. Then we had Falcon and Winter Soldier, which grounded us in what to expect from Marvel. And Loki was just this nice mix of, we don't want to go over the top in our theories, but was still exciting to watch. Bethany, go on.
So with me, I have a feel like with me, it's more that Loki has definitely creeped up slightly past WandaVision, but it's like a tied first with me at the moment. Obviously, I totally agree. WandaVision, like we've got to now think that these series are finished at the point where we're now going to lead into the film, and I kind of liked the way that WandaVision finished. Obviously, you know me, I enjoy emotional stuff and psychological stuff, but Loki for me has been a fun ride because I've seen no people guessing what's going to happen at the end. I've just been in for the ride, and that's what I've enjoyed about watching this weekly. So that's the reason why it is almost creeping past. I might have to have another rewatch of Loki this week, but it's definitely a tied first with me and WandaVision.
So let's get into the finale, and anyone watching, by the way, live, feel free to put your comments in the chat as well, and we will discuss those live. But warning, from this point onwards, we are going to be talking about the final episode. We know it just came out today, so please, if you haven't watched it and don't want spoiled, stop listening and come back later. So let's get into it. Just to kind of start off, I really enjoyed this because I'm a big fan of storytelling and character development, and unlike Wanda and Falcon, this episode was very grounded, no over-the-top action. Yes, we had a little action scene, but it actually fit within the storyline. It was actually character development during the action, which I thought was great. But we also had an introduction to a character which we need to talk about because it may not be the character everyone thinks it is. But general thoughts on the finale, the pacing of it, and the overall kind of story that we had revealed.
The theory I had, I am right. I know I'm right. Who was coming? I'm so glad they didn't mention him by name, but the coloration of his outfit and then the outfit you saw in the statue at the end. That's what made Loki so much more enjoyable for the finale. Was just that silent statement. Boom. It made me excited to what's coming next. Whereas WandaVision, I just felt like it was, a little bit excited, but nothing to sink my teeth in. It's just theories again, and even the action scene, as you said, like it wasn't over the top explosions and CGI. It was like an eloquent dance of debate. Really, it wasn't a fight or an action as such. It was just more fluid movements, but debating two choices. And I think it's what I like sometimes is Marvel is too lenient on big CGI finishes. Loki just did it with so much finesse. I just enjoyed it. It was so smooth the way it was done.
Yeah, everything tends to end up in like a load of people hitting each other for half an hour, and they've done that so well in the past, but it does become a little bit tiresome, I think, and Falcon certainly fell victim to that. It was very nice to see something very different. There was a little bit in the last couple of episodes that seemed not, I'd say predictable, but the timekeepers being the androids and not being what everyone thought they were. The pruning, not killing people, almost a little bit sort of Bad Wolf from Doctor Who. That reminded me of that. That was kind of, well, yeah, they're not just killing these random people. There's going to be something. They're going to send them somewhere. There were things like that felt a little bit predictable, and then kind of almost like a Wizard of Oz type reveal at the end that there's just no. They've been talking about all these aliens. They've beheaded some androids. There's this big monster that protects the void at the end of time, and then it's just a guy in an office that, yeah, he has magical powers and he's lived for thousands of years and has all these abilities. But I just thought that was really quite funny, actually, that it's just, oh, it's a guy. Yeah, we were prepping to fight like a 6-headed monster. No, human guy.
See, for me, I thought it was really well done. I absolutely loved it. Obviously, it followed all the way through with like Loki's self-discovery of who he is. And obviously from episode 5, it was just boom, straight into the castle. Obviously, what I just loved the whole CGI aspect of it as well, although there wasn't much of it, the creating of the whole build-up. But the whole pacing of the episode was quite nice. I've seen some people say that the pacing wasn't good, that was too slow, but for me, I felt like it was perfect for the payoff at the end. And like John said, just that silent scene, I just went, that's it. That's what I felt like, that's what WandaVision kind of needed at the end, not like her listening, but I absolutely enjoyed it. I just like the same thing again, the fight scene. It was very poetic. And then I'm going to say it, the kiss scene for me was just it was perfect. It was Loki actually saying, I trust myself, another version of myself, and then obviously suddenly, yeah, that was it. And he's back to square one. So I'm excited to see what's to come.
Now, we have to talk about He Who Remains, because lots of theories were saying this is Kang the Conqueror, when actually this, well, from my impression anyway, this isn't Kang the Conqueror. This is a version of him, but probably not good, not bad. And I think even says this, like, they're all kind of villains, but they do bad things, but they also want to do good things. He's in that grey area. And basically, yes, he was controlling the timeline, but he was controlling it to keep everybody safe. But now, what it's saying is, like, if you remember back to episode 1, the Infinity Stones mean nothing. And all of a sudden, we have this other version of him who will be Kang the Conqueror. In Ant-Man, I think, is the next one he's in. But could be across multiple things. We honestly don't know. But that wasn't Kang. I think there's a similar character called Immortus or something like that. Or,
yeah,
well,
Morbius.
basically, it's a version of him who kind of looks after the timeline and kind of operates in that grey area. I think that's who we got now. And the proper Kang the Conqueror will appear in Ant-Man and Quantumania. That's my impressions.
So the statue at the end with the arms behind the back and the outfit there is very much, all it's missing is the helmet and maybe the blue skin, because that's how he's portrayed in the comic books. That is, and I believe I'm willing to put money on this, I think that's Kang. And I think when Sylvie kicked Loki through the door, she kicked him through the primary TVA new timeline, or potentially just another reality of it. But I believe that throne that's been taken will be Kang's. And I think Kang's going to become an Avengers level threat. I think he's going to be the newer Thanos. He's going to be the new problem. You know, he's not interested in keeping the timeline. I think he's going to want to take from the timeline. And if they honor the comics, it's going to be one heck of a ride with Kang, because Kang's probably one of the most powerful villains that the Avengers have ever faced, even above Thanos in some ways. So I'm really excited. When I saw the statue, I lost my head.
See, the thing, I'm really excited for season 2, because technically I'm going to see season 2 is a remake to one of my favourite shows, which is Sliders. And I've got a funny feeling Loki is going to be jumping between all of the different multiverses. It's going to be like Quantum Leap and Sliders, where he's trying to get back home and he's jumping between all of the different multiverses. Because we've done the time thing, so I think doing that and him jump between the multiverses, trying to get back to his timeline, would be a really interesting series. And no doubt for all of the actors involved, like Owen Wilson, playing different characters each time, I think that would be a really awesome, exciting season. I could be totally wrong, but that's the direction I want to see Loki Season 2 go. But what else does everyone think?
I think totally the same, CJ. I think it is going to be Loki, because obviously, like I said, he's back at square one. And I think he is. I think this is going to be the start of like the multiverse phase through, was that That's what I think. In this new phase of Marvel, that's what the running theme is the multiverse. And I think this is going to be, I don't know whether series 2 is going to be either a lot like before Madness of the Multiverse or after, but it'd be interesting to see where the obviously where Loki ends up, and like obviously Loki discovering more about himself as well, because obviously he thinks he has, and obviously he's been kicked by his other variant, like the other variant. So, and he's back to square one of going, well, who am I actually? So I'm looking forward to seeing him just venture through, and exactly what you've gone and said. I want to see more Loki variants. I want to see President Loki, because he was wasted, admittedly, and it would be nice to see
Loki.
more Alligator Loki. Like I said, we need a plushie of Alligator Loki. Why is Disney not done this?
Well, it might happen now that the series has got on, but maybe that is season 2 of Loki. Maybe it is just 6 episodes of Alligator Loki. I'll put them on screen as well for everybody, because Alligator Loki was probably more wasted than President Loki. Or
Yep.
we have Alligator Loki versus Frog Thor. That is a battle that we need.
I mean, it's ending one way, isn't it? Alligators eat frogs.
We didn't hear Chris Hemsworth's voice for Frog Thor either. That was cut out. So it would be nice to have him back, reprise that role, and actually see in there.
They're just an entire movie. That's it.
I just need it.
Or they make it a buddy cop thing where Alligator Loki and Frog Thor battle crime together. That is the next Marvel. I'm not going to get hired by Disney anytime soon with this. But Bradley, what are your thoughts on the introducing of technically Kang the Conqueror?
I think it's interesting. Your point about the grey area is quite good. I mean, I think that was the benefit. I think it's better to go with that now rather than introducing a full-on villain now. It gives them so much more potential to then take their time with it. Like you say, being an Ant-Man, all the stuff that they could now do with him. And I think for what they wanted to use him for what, half an hour in this finale, I think that's a much more interesting way of doing it. There is having that grey area makes it work better for Loki, I think, because you have a villain version, you fight him, that's fairly straightforward. But with Loki, the way that they've taken him from what we know of him, and Ragnarok did sort of shift him back more towards the Thor side than the Loki side of Avengers, to put it that way. But Loki's always lived in that grey area throughout this series. And so kind of putting him against this version at the end, where actually, as he says, he might be right. He might be telling the truth and he thinks he is. He might be wrong and might be lying. But ultimately, Loki's come to care now about Sylvie and about everyone else, about the timelines, about these people that he's come across. He's softened a little bit, and actually now the mischief, it kind of has started to fade a little bit. And in this situation where he knows everything's on him to save everyone, I think having that grey area for him to live in worked really nicely.
Now, we do have a message in the chat, and we have Natalie saying, love the main villain, wasn't actually introduced, leaving some very cool doors open for the multiverse. And that is something I really want to talk about as well, in regards to the fact that Loki has just blew the MCU apart, because personally, I don't think we can trust any films now to be our timeline that we're used to. And who's to say that the next Spider-Man film is even going to be the Spider-Man that we know from the previous films? It's going to be very, very interesting how this all kind of develops, but it makes the MCU exciting again. I know we kind of had 10 years of, they introduce a superhero, they fight the bad guy, they come together, they battle it, but now there's just so many different avenues that people can take. Where's it going to go next?
And remember the days when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would just kind of be like, oh, the Avengers did something, we kind of need to incorporate that into our TV show.
Oh, look, we're picking up the rubbish from Thor Dark World, therefore we are part of the MCU because, look, he has some rubbish. Oh, look, there's Lady Sif. Hi, Lady Sif. Look, we're part of the MCU. And then by the time it got to season 4, it went, actually, no, we're not part of the MCU. We're not linked to it whatsoever. which was a very interesting development. I think at that point they just kind of went, you know what, screw it, we know we've only got a season and a half left. Let's just do whatever the hell we like.
See, I think with this series, what it's done is blown the doors open on what the theory of Spider-Verse into the Spider-Verse did, but it's doing it on a larger scale because obviously with animation you do only get a select audience, where the MCU, it has got that tag that has been brought on the minds of like most families now to watching it. And I think the greatest thing about this particular way it's gone down is it's given the opportunity, if Sony chooses to integrate its characters like Venom, Morbius and various others, it can do so now through this entire shattered timeline that's just happened. So I think it gives a great opportunity for them to diversify, characters that weren't part of the MCU into it and creating more structure now. Because I know there's been questions where people are going, is Venom going to cross over with Spider-Man? Is Morbius going to be crossed over with Spider-Man and all that lot? It's now to the point where if Sony and Marvel's relationship becomes better and, they share entities more and they share characters and allow things to happen, you now have an in, as opposed to what we had before where we were just speculating. Now it's well, actually it's part of Earth 616 or Earth 646 or Earth 765 or whatever random number you want to call it, sort of thing. And that's the door in. And I think that's great. And I think the What If series could be another opportune moment where this is introduced because of the cataclysm effects of what Loki's created. Obviously, they've created a shatter in time. Maybe all this What Ifs are stories from these different, frayed off timelines. So again, this could be another way of presenting an opportunity for the audience to learn about multiverse, because multiverse has only recently been introduced to a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of people that haven't read comic books very recently, whereas a lot of ourselves in this podcast, more than anything else, we are aware of multiverse. We're aware of the dynamics it creates. So it's an opportunity to again take the education of those who are becoming new geeks to the next level. And I think it's a great opportunity Loki's created.
Do you not find it funny that DC had a multiverse and it wasn't working, so they combined all of their shows together into one verse, whereas Marvel went, screw it, let's just go crazy. And when DC does it, it never seems to work. But when Marvel does it, everyone's just kind of like, oh my god, this is amazing. No one's ever done anything like this before. And DC's like, we've been doing it for about 10 years now. No? Nobody?
I have to defend DC here. DC did it because
Where's
it happens in Crisis in a comic.
2 seconds. I'll just need to mute John. So Bradley, John's muted, so he can't defend the DC verse. There you go. You'll have to unmute yourself, John. There you go.
You do have a point there, because, the thing is that Marvel couldn't obviously have done this 13 years ago. You've got to have this build-up of 20 films, 10 TV shows, all of the stuff they've done since 2008. You've got to have that build-up to get people to this point. You've started with Iron Man and how grounded that was, and you've gone through the more surreal things of all the stuff in Infinity War, the time travels. There are a lot of things that you've got to get through, the hoops you've got to jump through to actually get to this point where you can say multiverse and have people not instantly go, you what? Really? And get really confused. And the DC TV shows, they kind of tried to go at the longevity before jumping into that, and it didn't really work. But, Marvel, it's so extensive. It's got so much backing behind it. That's the other thing, isn't it? That we're not afraid to let them try something, because we know that more often than not they get it right. And so because they've got that track record of getting things different correct, then we know now that, okay, it might not work, but we've probably all got faith that it will, and actually we'll be able to follow it.
This is where John chips in and says, if the DC hadn't done the multiverse, we wouldn't understand it for Marvel, or something along those lines.
No, I was simply going to say that the problem is with the DC shows is the projection audience that it gets out to. Warner Brothers, the CW, are very restrictive of who can actually view it and the marketing behind it, whereas Disney and Marvel work hand in hand, where they've basically created this large opportunity for people to see it. They've marketed it really well. I will say that Disney, when it comes to marketing its movies and its series, squanders Warner Brothers. We won't even talk about their decisions recently, but like it squanders them in terms of the marketing. It puts a positive spin on it. Whereas the DC, I will say the DC shows would have had a huge success had Warner Brothers pushed the doors open for people to be able to see it. And I think that's the difference between these two entities. DC it wasn't successful because its executives didn't have confidence in it. And if you don't have confidence in it, you can't expect your audience to have confidence in it. Where Disney have purchased Marvel because they have this confidence, they have this backing, and because they're confident in it, it then advocates over to the audience there that are watching it. It's a basic salesman. You've got to have confidence in your own product in order to sell it to someone else. And I think that's the difference between this franchise and DC's franchise. They've had a confidence, they've taken the risk, they've done it, and they've marketed it and backed it and stood by their product.
Yeah, see, I totally agree with what John said. We've got to remember when Marvel first started out, especially with the first Iron Man movie, it was a risk that they took, and it was a really good risk. And obviously with that risk, and obviously with what they potentially ended up doing, Disney became interested and obviously bought them. And then as they went on or marketing, and then obviously accumulated more and more characters, they've been able to take these risks without having the loss of it. And obviously they've added a lot of comic book. I mean, from me, I'm not really into reading comic books, but it's allowed not just exclusive comic books, because I know DC can be very comic book heavy from what I've heard. I'm not so sure, but like from somebody coming from the outside in, it's kind of allowed me to then expand my own knowledge by going into reading the comics. So it's been very, very exclusive to pretty much anybody that can get to it and who enjoys exploring the characters further. But yeah, I think that this has definitely been a really nice mixture. And obviously with Disney having faith in these three series, and for I think especially the hype and the viewership's actually shown this format works for them, because I know for a fact they actually said WandaVision was like they were throwing it in just to see how it works in the streaming service, and it worked. It as we've seen, 23 Emmys are nominated. It just shows you that Marvel have got the right mixture for the digital TV series.
And I think a big part to play in that is having the right leads. No offense to Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, and I've said this in the previous podcast, they weren't given enough time to develop their characters before the series for us to really be invested in them, compared to Wanda and Vision, who we were. And a lot of the weight of the success, I'm going to say success of Loki, because I think it's been very successful, has come down to Tom Hiddleston and him being able to develop this character of Loki, which we get to see different sides of him. They hinted at in the 4 films and in the kind of Avenger ones, if you want to call them that, or Endgame, Infinity War and everything like that. But we've really got to kind of see the depths of Loki, these variants, but it all came onto Tom Hiddleston's shoulders. And personally, I think he's took that on and he's just blew some of the other performances in Marvel. Because of Loki, I'm putting him at the top of saying he's probably one of the best Marvel actors other than Elizabeth Olsen.
Definitely is.
I think one of the vital important things to mention is sort of like, even though the Winter Soldier and the Falcon, even though we consider it quite a weak product, like in terms of like the acting ability and the those who have obviously watched it in comparison to WandaVision and Loki, it's still a huge success in the fact that people like it because of this methodology that Disney and Marvel create great shows and movies. People are automatically switching on and going, yes, I like that. And I think that's the work of not just the writers, but obviously the marketing team behind it. And of course, yeah, you choose the right people in the spotlight and it shines just that extra bit. Like the Loki series was already a success before it started because Tom Hiddleston was such a buzz, was such an excitement that people were automatically ready to watch this and love it from the start. And I think that was the same thing for Winter Soldier and the Falcon. Not so much for Anthony Mackie, not to say he's not deserving of it, but Sebastian Stan has a huge following of people that really love him as an actor, love Bucky as a character, that they were ready to love the show before. And I think that is the hard work they've put in place before, just with the characters. But again, like you say, Loki, Tom Hiddleston, people were right to love it from the start, because he has an air about him. He's on screen. He doesn't have to speak. He's just his presence. He is Loki.
See, that what I love, because I've always enjoyed watching Tom Hiddleston's performances as anything. I remember going to see Coriolanus, which is one of the plays that he did at the National Theatre, I think it was called. And I totally agree. He understands the character, because if some people actually look into Tom Hiddleston, he actually studied English literature. So with him having that kind of constructive mindset, he can actually see as a whole of what that character is. So when you see that presence in the Avengers movie, when he first comes out of the portal, and that presence, like, that is just, it's amazing. And it's all because he actually has that fantastic understanding of the character. And that's what makes him, to me, like one of my all-time favorite like male actors to watch and perform. And the same thing with Elizabeth as well. She's kind of got that as well, in the way that she portrays Wanda. Not so much other performances, but with Wanda, she's definitely got that analysis of a character, which she then can push forward. But yeah, I totally agree. If you see Tom Hiddleston, you can just be like that. It's Loki.
I think there's an element that helped this as well, that we've not really seen him as Loki for 4 years. He was in Endgame for a bit, in Infinity War for a bit, and in Endgame for a bit, and that was it. And since Ragnarok, he's kind of just been this character that lives in the background of our memory. And so giving him the chance, and I think the premiere actually did a really great job of highlighting the more enjoyable, the sort of the almost laugh a minute from the audience type Loki that we do see, and then already straight away embodying the more emotional, deeper side that we learn to see a lot throughout this series. So that by the time we come to episode 5, episode 6, the stuff with Sylvie, I'm not a massive lover of the romantic angles in most things, and I don't particularly love it here, but I buy into it very much, because you do buy into this Loki character, all the stuff that he goes through before the series, all the stuff that he's introduced to, his character or his variants or his timelines, people, him in various states go through the death of everyone, and the stuff that he physically goes through in this 6-episode run. I think you buy straight into it, and you are right, CJ, that Tom Hiddleston probably is right up there as the best in the MCU.
And I think a big part of what I've enjoyed about the season as well, it's because you mentioned that Sylvie. Again, I'm not big on the whole romance side, but it wasn't the focus. It was just kind of a natural progression for the characters, and it did make sense. And I wouldn't say it was full-on romance. It just had those little sparks. But the key thing was the chemistry between Tom and Sophia. It is Sophia, isn't it? Sophia DiMatteo.
Yep.
Was just brilliant. It was a character I knew was going to be in it, because of leaks and everything like that, but I didn't realise how big an impact she was going to have overall, and how fast she's actually becoming one of my favourite characters, even though she kind of screwed the entire Marvel universe over at the end. You kind of feel and understand why she's done it. She's felt controlled. She was meant to get rid of when she was a young child. She would not have survived the end of the world. But she grew, and she just wanted it to be over, and she didn't care what was over. And that little kind of kiss between her and Loki, I don't think was just as a distraction tactic. I think it was, she was showing that actually, I do trust you, but I need to do this more. But I thought her performance overall was just astounding again. I really enjoyed her, and I thought it was going to be Owen Wilson was going to be my standout favourite, but it was actually Sylvie. Don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like Sylvie, I didn't expect to like her as much, but for me, I totally agree. The sparks that we saw between her and Loki, she's like the yin to his yang type of thing, and obviously, I think Loki's had to see this version of himself because bearing in mind, I see Sylvie as the version of of what Loki could have been like. Obviously, what he was like during 2012 Avengers. So it was nice for him to kind of see going, is this the person who I was supposed to be? And then trying to kind of pull her over to his way of thinking. And obviously, I don't agree with like the romance side of it, but as you said, CG, it was very much like a natural flow that we saw. It wasn't just sort of bam, it's here, because they were always wary of each other. And then once it got to that kiss, even she was just like, no. And then she ended up regretting it. She sat on the floor and was consumed by it. I'm very interested to see more of Sylvie's story. I think we're going to see her in season 2, and I absolutely love what Sophie has gone and done. Obviously, she sat down with Tom and like studied his work basically, and she's hit the nail on the head. Like she is one of my favorite actresses now. I feel like I could go and watch her career.
So for my interpretation of Sophia's Sylvie Loki is that she started off as a innately good Loki, a version of which isn't really seen. This is my interpretation, of course, that she was a good Loki, whereas Loki, Tom Hiddleston's Loki, he was a innately mischievous little sod that liked to cause mayhem, and it was a little bit chaotic. And it's kind of like the two have like, she's been consumed by anger all of her life and a resentment that it's corrupted her, whereas his anger and resentment has been manifested from himself, whereas hers has been manifested from someone else. I think it was easier to cure his journey as it can be hers, but it's going to be longer, and she needs to have that moment of regret where she realizes she stepped too far. But I think Loki's had that, and I think for season 2, I think that should be the focus of Sophia, Loki, Sylvie. It should be about Loki trying to save her and her save herself, and redeem herself and find her place, because our Loki's got to that point. He's in his journey in some ways. So I think season 2 she should be the main focus, and I'd be excited to see her as the main focus.
Instead about it being natural there, Bethany, like the episode 3, the train one, it ties into what John just said about him sort of going through this reflection and her not getting there until the finale. That was a turning point. It felt very natural that you got those two together, because it could have very easily gone into a series where it was Loki and Mobius and they're chasing Sylvie for 5 episodes, and it's almost the buddy cop thing, but the whole way through. And I don't think that would have been anywhere near as effective. But you throw Loki into that situation very naturally, put them at the end of the world, and I think there you kind of see that he realizes, actually, yeah, what is my life? What is my life that I've done all these mischievous things, and now I'm at the end of the world. I'm not going to survive. And there's this other version of me that has just kind of had her life taken from her, but is trying to grapple with it and has these things on revenge. She actually has a purpose for it, whereas Loki is just kind of going his day to day. What can I do today? What can I do today? And he says it, doesn't he? Like, why would I do this? I think, or why would I cause the mischief? I think he says something like that, doesn't he? That, yeah, I think they mesh very nicely together.
Now, interesting thing brought up in the chat here that I think is worth talking about. We've been asked, do you think this Loki is more mature than the Loki of end of Ragnarok? Now, I think we've got to remember as well, the Loki in the TV series, there's only been maybe a week between the first Avengers film and where he ends up. But I'm actually leaning towards this Loki's kind of shown his timeline and he's just realised, I'm not going to survive if I continue the way I am. Do you guys think he's more mature? Do you think he's learned from his mistakes? Or do you think the one at the end of Ragnarok was the more mature Loki? What do you guys think? I think it's a brilliant question in the chat.
I
I
think
think it ties into each other, really, in a way. With him seeing that footage of what happens in his timeline, has actually allowed him to see, is this the person that I want to be? So obviously, as I've said before, this show was about self-discovery, and I do feel like he has matured not to the exact point of Ragnarok, but he is getting there. Like we're saying, we're only in season 1, but we have hit that point where it's a realization. He's going like, this isn't what I want to do. So honestly, I think what was a really, really good question, but I do believe that he is getting to the point of Ragnarok.
I don't think we're there yet.
He's maybe going further. I think this Loki is going to end up being probably the best version of Loki we are going to have. John, I think you wanted to say something there as well.
I think to say he's more mature than the Ragnarok would be a blanket statement that wouldn't serve both versions. I think he's at a different point than the Ragnarok. The Ragnarok got there on a slow journey, whereas even though you see your life flash on this screen, you're not feeling those emotions. You're seeing those emotions, but you're not feeling and going through the wave of those. Whereas this other Loki that obviously dies at the end of Infinity War, he experienced those things. He matured at a different level. He was willing to give his life to save his brothers by trying to kill Thanos. That's an air of maturity and an air of sacrifice that he was willing to do. To take away and say that, this Loki's more mature, for me personally, would be taken away from that Loki's, abilities and that Loki's accomplishments. So I feel like they're both mature. Well. Yeah, and I think they're both matured, but they're just on two different paths. This is a Loki that's avoiding that by improving himself, and that's a Loki that's got to that point, that's gone, right, this is the card I've been dealt with. Rather than doing what I'd usually do, I'm going to see this to the end, even if it costs me my life. And that's a level of maturity in itself. So I think they're both probably on par because they're at the same point, but they're just strayed off differently in terms of their choices and how they deal with things. And I think if the Ragnarok Loki survived Infinity War, there's nothing to say that he isn't like this Loki now. We didn't get enough to see of him there.
I don't think we want in the future though. New timelines.
Yeah, I don't think this Loki's there yet. But the difference I would make is that maturity being an experience thing, right? That you go through experiences, you learn from them, and you mature. When you're in a similar situation next time, you do something different, you do something better. That's what the pre Infinity War Ragnarok Loki did. This one, I think, will end up there because he will go through these experiences. He started going through these experiences, and he will get to that point. The difference is that this Loki has awareness rather than necessarily maturity because of the experience, because it's been a week since New York. He's just been shown everything. So he knows what that Loki goes through, what all of these other Lokis go through. So he now knows what he can avoid. So it's almost a little bit prescient, actually, that rather than looking back on his own life and seeing what he's done and where he can improve, it's actually, okay, if I stay on this path, where am I going to go wrong? And doing it in advance. And I think that's it. Like you say, John, it's two different paths. It's two different journeys for him. He will end up in a similar place. And this one, I think, will, like I say, advance beyond Ragnarok Loki. But it's just that difference in how they experience it.
Now, I do think we need to mention the big bad of the season. Now, everyone's saying it's Kang, the TVA, but actually the badass of the season has to be Miss Minutes. We do not mess with that cheeky little sarcastic little clock, because I think people are missing something here. This is a self-aware holographic clock that gives people abuse. Is there more to this? Am I reading into this wrong? Because this clock seems to be way too self-aware and smart and working with this version of Kang. Is it just an AI that He Who Remains, I should say. Is it just an AI that He Who Remains has made? Or is there something else behind this little evil munchkin?
I think there's something behind it. I mean, when she appeared in the castle and stopped them, I was like, what you doing? I got pretty scared of her. I would not mess with Miss Minutes. That's the type of vibe I got. But I obviously we know that this version of Khan that we saw, he said that there were scientists. So could this be something that one of them have made and it's infiltrated this timeline? I honestly cannot wait to see more of Miss Minutes, but yeah, she knows more than what seems, really, to be fair.
Do you know what I was half expecting? But this is just my weird sense of humour. It's the fact that maybe when they walked in, Miss Minutes would have walked out, but it would have been a really bad Comic-Con cosplay version where it's someone in one of those really bad foam suits looking like that, and you can see the person's face sticking out the nose.
There's actually somebody who did a cosplay of it at the premiere. Yeah. Like, that's what I imagined walking.
But I wanted it to be Tara Strong actually come out with her face like little Miss Minutes walking out saying, "It was me all along." Haha. That's a missed opportunity, Marvel. I'm devastated.
Either that or it turns out Agatha really is Miss Minutes.
That would have been amazing. That would have been nice, I think.
See, this is why we're not writers of TV shows. I think they've definitely picked the right people for writing it. Another person I want to bring up, because we haven't really mentioned him, but I think he is and has been quite an important character, even though his screen time was probably not as long as what we're hoping, and that was Owen Wilson's Morbius. I really enjoyed the character. I thought he was good. I thought the relationship between him and Loki in the short time they had was there. But as soon as they hugged each other, like, kind of goodbye at the end of episode 5, I knew we weren't going to see much more of them in the final episode. It was obvious it was never going to be about him. But I want to see more of this character. I actually want to see a 10-episode season 2, and we have these different versions of Morbius that Loki ends up, every time he meets, they just have this relationship build up and this dynamic straight away. I don't know about you guys, your thoughts on Owen Wilson?
I thought he was a fantastic addition. I was a little bit apprehensive at first, because obviously with the his career, he does a lot of comedy, but I think Morbius has been the right role. But I totally agree. I've loved the build up. The same thing. Their relationship's been very nice and steady, and obviously that hug at the end, it was quite heartbreaking. But I totally agree. I would just like to see more versions of Morbius, and I would definitely say I want to see him with the jet ski. If it's that, please come and make that happen, Marvel, because give that man
I've
a jet
already
ski.
said the scene needs to happen. They have it as an after credits finale of season 2, and when he's on the jet ski, all you hear as he goes off into the sunset is "wow," and that's it. That's how they need to end it, because we didn't get the wow. And I don't know if you saw social media, but people were kicking off that we didn't get the wow.
Or the jet ski scene.
Yeah. It's terrible. Lads, I don't want your thoughts on Morbius, or even just the lack of wow in jet ski.
I'm in favour of the lack of wow, to be honest. It's a little bit too self-aware.
We could have had that while he was lying on the floor.
Yeah,
maybe there's a variant of Morbius where he is actually Owen Wilson.
I was just waiting for him to own a Labrador called Marley, just trashing up the TVA.
Oh,
I thought that would have been funny.
Why
Don't do that to us.
Why do that to people?
John.
Maybe there's a
Cruel.
multiverse where the dog lives.
The dog is Kang.
Maybe there's a multiverse where the dog is actually Mobius.
Or, in fact, he's a car.
See, look what I've started here, CJ. I've created something here, the Marleyverse.
That's
I
good.
feel like
That's
we
good.
need to move on from this very, very quickly. The next person who I thought started off a bit slow, but actually is leading up to be quite an interesting sort of baddie, and that's Rainslayer. I keep forgetting her name in this, but I want to say Rainslayer. Obviously, the dynamic between her and Owen Wilson was brilliant. The friendship, are they going to get together sort of thing, and then just her whole, I know it's all fake, and right now I just don't care. But the biggest question is, she said she's going to look for free will. Does that mean she's trying to find it and get rid of it? She likes having this control? Because I think in the comics, she actually has a relationship with Kang. And it'd be interesting to see if that relationship develops. But what do you guys think of Rainslayer?
Well, first of all, I think I mean, Gugu and Batha still it sticks in the back of my head as being like, I know her from Torchwood, And the fact that she's become one of the more prominent American actors in the last 5-6 years with The Good Fight and now this as well, like that, it's so impressive. She's amazing in this. She really is. I'm intrigued to see where it goes because, like you say, her for the first few episodes, it seemed fairly sort of mundane, that she was the enforcer type, sort of the lieutenant of the timekeepers, and that works. And then you expose the lie, and suddenly it seems like she's more in bed with everything. But actually, the fact that she doesn't know anything, really, she doesn't know all the stuff about the fact that the TVA is fake and that they're real. That actually now, when you, like you say, going to see and find free will she destroy it? That seemed to be the vibe, didn't it? Because, yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued.
So I sort of have a theory, because a lot of this series, this particular season, hasn't really been about good guys and bad guys. It's been about moral dilemmas and about like undertones of there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's no one particular bad guy. However, the theory going forward, I do feel that Miss Minutes she's been selected to be the head of this branch for a particular reason. She's been scouted out. Now, most people would think, oh, well, it's this neutral Kang that would have done it. However, I don't think Miss Minutes is working necessarily for that Kang. I think she's working for the other Kang, the Kang the Conqueror, and that she's operating on a basis which she's using this particular timelines to select certain TVA members and select certain potentials that can operate and help the other Kang. Because Miss Minute seems to be very insightful in understanding and knowing things, yet she didn't seem to prevent the death of the neutral Kang. And I think in a way she's working with Kang the Conqueror, knew that the Lokis would ultimately, because she could have probably stopped the two Lokis from entering the chamber, but she allowed them to enter, knowing probably the fact that that they're going to kill this neutral one, allowing Kang the Conqueror to take that throne and destroy the timeline. Because Miss Minutes doesn't seem, she's given information to I forgot her name now already, but that's it. Yeah, she's given information to her, and you don't know what she's actually read, but she says she's on about removing, finding free will. I don't necessarily think she's going to remove free will. I think she's operating free will in the fact that she's selected to now go with this other Kang. So she's being given the opportunity to act how she feels she wants to. And in doing so, what she believes is going to be for the betterment of herself and for everybody else, because she still has that moral stance that she wants to help the TVA. So maybe she's been led down a path where she believes she has free will, and in doing so is now going to operate a catastrophic time problem, which we will find out more in season 2. But I think there's undertones, not necessarily evil in her, but she's so desperate to take control while also still creating this moral choices that I think there's more. I think Miss Minutes is probably leading her down a path.
So yeah, I agree with John. I definitely think Miss Minutes has been feeding like breadcrumbs to rainslayer to get to the point where we are, and I do agree. I think she is going to go to this evil Khan, the Conqueror that we're waiting for. But like when we've seen the finale, she was a teacher, so obviously she has this moral good ground that she is doing the right thing. So when I seen that today, I went, it actually makes sense for her character. And I think I totally agree. She's definitely been selected by this Kang and Miss Minutes. And she's just been fed these little breadcrumbs throughout the series. And obviously she's being told to go and find him. I think that's what she just had on that 10 pack was the destination of where to find this Khan. She had to wait for that moment when the multiverse opened, and that was her opportunity to go through them. So I'm very, very excited to see more of her in series 2.
Now, is there any particular characters, because I'm coming up towards the end, I always try to keep these about an hour because you're giving up loads of your time, but is there any particular characters or moments from this season that have just really stood out to you, or anything that you want to talk about as a highlight from the season?
Couldn't it be 12? Is that what she's called? The time
B15, is it?
B50, yeah, definitely her. I mean, I would love to see more of her story. Obviously, it looks like we are going to, but I mean, that scene with where Sylvie shows her who she was, and that she was a variant. That was the acting, and that was incredible. Like, if she doesn't get any recognition for that, I'll be shocked.
Guys,
I really love Casey in the first episode. The receptionist guy. I mean, it fit. I don't think because he's in one of the later episodes, isn't he? And giving him some sort of recurring role, bearing in mind how not so much dark, but how much more serious than some previous Loki scenes have been. Actually, sort of giving him that larger role probably wouldn't have worked. But if we go down the route of, like you suggested, CJ, the multiple Lokis and exploring all of that, I think whether you could fit him in, I don't know, but I think there's ways that you could fit him in a much lighter season.
John?
I think the thing I really enjoyed was the last few minutes of the finale. The moment where Loki has given love to someone and feels betrayed, but also feels like misled. The kind of realization you have when you realize what it's like to feel it back. Like the amount of characters, the amount of people in Loki's life that have given him love, and he's shown maybe not the same face they wanted to see back. It was kind of like that emotion. I read so many emotions from it. And to have that level of conveying that message or a general message without saying anything at all is the pinnacle of being a great actor. And I think that capped, for me personally, the whole of Tom Hiddleston's acting throughout this entire series. And I just love that scene where he just sits there and it's his eyes and it's his facial expressions. You can see thoughts, even though it's not a real character, you can imagine the thoughts going through, like, I can't believe she's done this. I showed her trust thingy. Maybe this is what it's like being on the receiving end. And yeah, I just thought that scene was so impactful.
He got stabbed by the invisible dagger.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice little tie-in, just going back to the original story. For me personally, it was just Sylvie's arc. I just loved the introduction of this character. I thought it was just brilliantly acted, showed range, the physicality, the emotion of it, just those little kind of small moments where just the chemistry is just on fire, even though they're not doing anything. I just think that whole plot for Sylvie and how it's leading up to season 2 for her as well, and hopefully, who knows, maybe in Doctor Strange or Ant-Man, it'd be great to see some of them. Obviously, it's rumoured that Loki will be appearing in Doctor Strange or possibly the Thor film, because he was dressed as Loki in February when Loki had finished filming. So who knows what's happening with this multiverse anymore. I think the MCU is going to be really interesting because of Loki, and we're not going to be able to see the impact it's had until probably December now. The first Spider-Man, is it December, this first Spider-Man film? There's nothing else out before that. That's going to be the first time we're going to be going, what is happening to the MCU? So it's really, really exciting to see what comes next. But we will end it there because we've went well over an hour, and I know we could talk about this lots more. But I also like to give you guys an opportunity just to say if people want to find you, chat you on social media and things like that. Bethany, if anyone wants to find you or chat to you more, where can we find you?
So I am the Lost Princess Cosplay on both Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Bradley, even though I don't want to, where can people find you?
I'm Bradley_Adams TV on Twitter. If you send me things, I might even check my Twitter.
Yeah, he never checks it. He's terrible for social media. But he does run a whole load of competitions on SpoilerTV and stuff like that. And you probably have one coming up soon, actually, with the TV season.
I've actually passed that one over, yeah, the series competition. But that will be running soon, yeah.
Yeah. So, and you do loads of sport and stuff now as well? Can anyone find any sport and stuff that you've been doing?
Yeah, I'm on Bradley_Adams44 for if you want to read my thoughts on random cricket mostly.
Yeah, I'm bored of that already. And John, if people want to find you.
Yeah, as long as you don't mention England, I'm fine on Multiverse Geekman, both Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, and obviously as an Italy fan myself, nah, not really. I'm not an Italy fan. I'm not even that bothered. But yeah, it was a good game if people watched it. I predicted 2-1. Or 1-0 was it? I predicted Italy the win, but hey, there you go. But thank you to everyone who's commented in the chat, everyone who's watched live, anyone who's listening or watching later on. Really do appreciate it. If you want to find me, it's CJ the Geek. But more importantly, hit that follow button on Twitch or hit the subscribe button and just check out all the latest news and information. Just to remind you, Loki has been renewed for season 2. If you want to get any of the posters and stuff like that from the season 1, it's all on the SpoilerTV site. But thank you for watching. We should be back on Sunday with another Spodcast. So yeah, come back for that.